We're going to get started. My name is Nick Amy. I'm the Director of Outreach and Development for NAMI-Bucks County, Pennsylvania. And I'm joined by our Executive Director, Debbie Moritz. And to give you just an update on what NAMI is, if you're not familiar, NAMI is the nation's largest grassroots organization dedicated to building better lives for the millions of Americans affected by mental health conditions. And here at NAMI-Bucks County, we do that through providing no-cost, recovery-focused education, support, and advocacy. So this NAMI Forum is part of our education series, and we're fortunate to be able to offer this to you of no cost from our friends at 1847 Financial. I told Pat and Brian initially that their biographies are super long. So what I'm going to do is turn it right over to them without further ado so that we can get started and let them tell you a bit about themselves. But I just want to thank you, Pat and Brian, for joining us tonight. Take it away.
Yeah, thank you, Nick, Debbie, for having us come out. I know it's been probably maybe 7 or 8 years since I presented for NAMI-Bucks County, so I appreciate the opportunity to come back, share this important information. Brian, you want to just give a quick background on you, and then I'll give my background and get into things? No, he's muted. So I'll give mine and Brian's background.
Oh, I'm unmuted now.
There you go.
Technology.
Technical malfunctions. Hi, everybody. You might remember me from the Stride event back in October with the green stress balls and pistachios. Thank you again, Nick and Debbie, for an awesome event. We're really thrilled to be here. As Pat will lead into, our team has specialized in special needs planning for almost 15 years. And when I personally came into the industry, I realized there was such a need for caregivers of loved ones with mental illness. They don't get to think of themselves enough. When you have a loved one in this space, you don't get to plan for tomorrow, and that can be extremely overwhelming. You're just trying to take life one day at a time. If at the end of this webinar, we have been the catalyst to efficiently plan for yourself and your loved ones, we've done our job tonight. So really, again, thank you very much for being here. Again, we're thrilled, and I'll pass it off to Pat.
Thank you, Brian. And what Brian's going to do, just because we're trying to, in terms of follow up for this event, I mean, coming and getting this information is really step one. We're going to talk about a lot. I mean, I don't think we can make everybody an expert in special needs or financial planning and how it's unique to having a loved one with mental illness, but hopefully share with you some of the common planning pitfalls I've seen over the past 12 years and strategies to avoid them. And hopefully, if anything from tonight, encourage you to not only take an active role in the planning, to begin it, to understand how very different it is than your boilerplate legal and financial planning, that the advice you've been getting over the years, even though you think it might not be broken, sometimes you need to break things to fix them and make them better, and know that not all advice is created equally. So Brian, on occasion, is going to hold up his email address. If you have questions too, or want us to follow up with you one-on-one, if this information gets overloading and you want to talk about your own personal situation one-on-one, we'll follow up with you to schedule a time to do a Zoom meeting and talk about your pertinent situation. So quick background on me, for those of you who don't know me or didn't see me present before. I've been doing this for over 17 years. The past 12 years, our practice has been focused on financial planning for families just like yours. And it's very different. There's no manual. There's no cookie cutter approach. There's no how-to to this. And I have these same conversations 3 to 4 times a day, and they're all the same, but they're all different, if that makes sense, because I think everybody, just like your individuals, while you're here, while they're unique, the planning for them has to be unique and tailored and specialized as well. And honestly, you know, from autism to Down syndrome to intellectual disabilities, mental illness is honestly probably the hardest type of planning to plan for, because it hasn't been there since birth. It hasn't been there since early on. It may have manifested itself later on in life. It might have manifested itself for your loved one after things were going great and looked like the path that you wanted your child to go on was the path they were heading down, and then all of a sudden sometimes a U-turn has been made. And that, I honestly, is the hardest, I think, planning situation to deal with, because you're constantly hoping things will get better, things will go back to the way they were, but sometimes that doesn't happen. And look, I've got mental illness in my family. I know the stresses of it. I know the acceptance of it, and the fact that what the current path that you're planning was going on, you're retiring for yourself, retiring for you and your partner, and all of a sudden now it's a retirement plan for 3, and things have to change. So I want to make as most efficient use of this time. I appreciate those of you that had questions that you sent them to Nick prior. So I'm going to tackle everything that you guys had asked. Some of them are going to be better addressed by Dave. Dave Siegel's presenting on March 24th on the specifics of the legal side. And I'll talk about how, the interaction between legal, financial, and that sort of thing. And then there's some other questions that we got that will probably be really good to be addressed by Brian on the 21st of April when it comes to the personal finances. So without further ado, I'm going to go through the slideshow I usually go through. I'm going to skip over it on the slides that I think we don't need to spend as much time on. But hopefully if you have questions, send the emails to Brian, or if you can, however, get them to us during, and we'll try to get to any other topics that everybody wants to talk about. So, planning as a caregiver, since I would imagine most of you tuning in are caregivers of a loved one that has a disability or a special needs to some extent, if it's mental illness, and I know that this is open to the community, so others. All of these things are pretty much the same for the clients of ours, the parents that we work with, is we need to make sure that this individual that depends on us to some extent now, their quality of life, their lifetime care is maintained while we're alive, but also when we're gone. And that there is going to be somebody that tries to fill the parent's shoes as best as possible without putting that burden, and I hate saying burden, but responsibility, however you want to word it, on other family members. I'm sure you found other family members, the relationship with their sibling or other loved one may be contentious, or there may not be a relationship there at all. So it gets very tricky to figure out who is that person or people that are going to do the things I'm doing as a parent when I'm not here or not able to do it. Government benefits for mental health are very different than somebody that has a diagnosis since birth, a cerebral palsy, a Down syndrome, where qualifying for these things is a lot easier. It's trickier. And the good news is you don't have to reinvent the wheel. There's experts out there that focus on navigating government benefits that I really think it's important to tap into rather than try to do this on your own. I'll spend some time on how this 3-person retirement's different. The providing equitably, another hard question to answer of the many hard questions. If you have children that are neurotypical, grandchildren, how do you provide equitably for everybody when your one individual or 2 individuals may need money more than they do? So it's hard. And Uncle Sam, unfortunately, does not care from a tax standpoint that you have a loved one with a disability. They're going to get taxed just like anybody else's, in some cases worse, depending on the type of assets that we leave behind. So it's understanding that this is ongoing planning. It is not something you do, throw it in a box or a filing cabinet and never look at it again. You really have to, it has to evolve. Your loved one situation is going to evolve. Tax laws are going to change, and family relationships may change too. So where are the mistakes? I think I need to reorder these because the bottom one is usually the biggest mistake. I don't have time to do this, or my child's younger. I have other priorities filling my plate, throw a pandemic on top of things. And it makes just, I guess, dealing with this one of the last things a lot of people want to think about. I mean, the Dave Siegels of the world, the attorneys, us as financial planners, we don't have lines outside of our office for people knocking on our doors every morning saying, hey, I want to talk about when I die, or if I became disabled, or if I have enough money in retirement, because of these are sometimes things people don't want to talk about. But when do you have to do it? It makes it a whole lot easier if you do it before you die, honestly. I mean, there's some things we can do after we die. It just becomes less efficient. So really, we have to do it as soon as possible. We owe it to our loved ones. We owe it to the individuals that aren't able to make the decisions for themselves. So, but when it comes to it, the implementation, actually doing this, it shouldn't just be with anybody. I mean, your attorneys that have helped you with your legal planning so far, your family law attorney, or somebody that helps you with a DUI or real estate law, they should not be touching special needs estate planning. The legal work is so specialized, it has to be done by an attorney that does this every day, not a dabbler. Financially, don't be lulled into this false sense of security that we as financial advisors, or you as your own financial advisor, have done anything special the past 10 years in making your accounts grow. We could have thrown a dart at any major stock market index and things would have done well, and we would have all looked like geniuses. I don't think that's going to continue. So the financial pieces, the insurances you've implemented, the investments that you've made, that doesn't mean we just set it and forget it and never look at things again. You really need the right financial advice that, insurance planning, there are unique strategies when you have a loved one with a disability, and you need to understand that. Term insurance, just having a term insurance plan doesn't cut it. You need to have the right plan that gives you the most flexibility when you need flexibility for your loved one in the future. And investment wise, the biggest mistake I think Brian and I see all the time is you're thrown into this cookie cutter model based on your age that everybody else your age is supposed to be doing, or a Forbes article tells you you're supposed to be doing, or a boilerplate 401k article that gets sent to you from your 401k administrator. There is no manual for special needs planning from a financial standpoint. So you really can't stress it as much enough. Have to work with the right experts. Tax wise, you definitely need a tax advisor to navigate you through 30, 40 years of tax changes in retirement. So you can't do TurboTax or H&R Block in retirement. You need somebody that can partner with your advisors. So again, experts in this area. Or they just don't talk to you. The people you work with don't talk, and there's no open flow of communication between the legal and the financial and the tax people. You need everybody working as a cohesive team. Things that are collecting dust, legal documents over 5 years old, absolutely need to be updated because of the Secure Act a couple of years ago. Taxes change regularly. So there's so many mistakes that are made. And for those of you that have had IEP plans for your loved one, I don't think any of you have ever settled for an IEP to just be okay, to be sufficient. No, you fought tooth and nail for the absolute best plan for your loved one, the best education they could have received, the best therapeutic plan that they could get. Why settle for your finances or estate planning to be okay? You want optimal, you want efficient, you don't want any holes, any gaps that are either there now or might present themselves. You want everything done at the absolute best way it can be. So here's the three areas. These are the three key areas, all very different, but interrelated when it comes to special needs planning. And I'm not an artist, so bear with my 3D interpretation, but this is the first thing I go through every initial meeting. Because this is confusing, right? I mean, acronyms you need to know, where do these certain people fit in certain roles that people play? It's also confusing and frustrating because you have to deal with the government to some extent with these things, and even dealing with hospitals and medical care is frustrating. So the legal planning, and this is what David Siegel is going to cover on March 24th. Very different than what we do from a financial planning. So I can't do what Dave does. Dave can't do what we do from a financial standpoint, which is why you need both. And I say this all the time, a special needs trust, probably the most important legal document everyone on this call needs to have. Special needs planning does not begin and end with having a special needs trust. So these documents, when you go to the attorney and they create these legal documents, you leave his or her office with paperwork. The trust, the special needs trust, is paperwork. The will is paperwork. The powers of attorney are paperwork. The special needs trust legal document is not some magical creation of wealth that's actually going to take care of your child. It's just legalese, well written, that puts this protective barrier around the assets that the trust will eventually own. It is not an asset itself when you leave the attorney's office. So a lot of people are confused by that. They say, "Oh, I have a special needs trust. I'm all set." Probably the two words that make me cringe the most in financial planning. I'm all set. Yeah, I've never seen anybody all set in 17 years that there hasn't been one thing that can be done more efficiently. So, but having a trust is great. You need it because if you have somebody that is eligible for these government benefits, we can't leave them anything outright. The $2,000 resource limit has not changed. There are higher resource limits for other kind of benefits, but I would keep $2,000 in mind because they can't have access to more of that, or they are first and foremost not eligible for government benefits. But I don't think we would really want our loved ones that have any kind of disability or mental illness that may come and go, having unrestricted access to the wealth that we leave behind. So the trust, on top of protecting benefits, protects against creditors, litigation, marriage and divorce, bad habits, spending habits, other things that could manifest themselves. So it is a very, very important legal document. But the purpose of it above those government benefits is to take care of your loved one. It's to pay for the things that give him or her quality of life the way you envision that to look like. And Brian and I can't tell you what that means. We can help you quantify, what it would cost to need to provide that for the rest of their life. But quality of life, lifetime care, and I think most importantly, managing their care. It may not be every day, but once a week, a couple of times a month, that there's somebody checking in on them. They live in their own apartment. Who's going there every week to make sure it's clean? If they need anything, if their medications are lined up. The clients I have who have their 30-year-old dependent children living in their own apartment, they're usually there a couple times a week getting their medications lined up, making sure that they're okay. Who's going to do that when you're gone? It's a lot to ask of our other children, and I can promise you, when they have families of their own, their own children are going to take precedence over their brother or sister. It just has to happen that way. And they may not live logistically close. So these things are all super important as part of the plan. But look, none of it happens without money. And when I say none of it happens, your retirement, your own quality of life doesn't happen without enough money being managed appropriately over the rest of your life. Paying for these things for your child when you're gone doesn't happen without enough money. And the legal planning can be done if you die and there's no trust in place. We could do it the David Siegels of the world can do it reactively after you're gone. It's not as efficient because the trust we have to create at that point in time has a required Medicaid payback, which we don't want to have. But we can't create money after the fact. We can't create wealth after you're gone. So the financial planning piece, the two promises we make to every client that we choose to bring on. The promise number one, which is also the most important goal, slightly the more important than the second goal, is your quality of life, mom and dad. It's your ability to do what you not only need to do, but want to do over the rest of your life. And if you're not retired yet, retire hopefully as soon as possible, transition to being financially independent, working because you want to, not because you have to, but also retiring at the highest amount of income. The most income from all sources: Social Security, pensions, investments, home equity, life insurance, part-time work, whatever it might be. But it is also with the highest probability of not running out of that money for the rest of your life. So I guess it's most retirees plan, retire early, highest amount of income, not run out before you die. That's our goal. So all decisions we make, paying off a house, refinancing, paying for college, all of it should be based on the answer of, will this give me more retirement income when I choose to retire? The second goal, we need to fund the special needs trust. You're going to go through the legal expense and investment of creating a special needs trust. We better fund it adequately. And tax efficiently, so Uncle Sam's not taking an unnecessarily high amount of it, but funding that special needs trust in the most cost-effective way that has the least negative impact on your ability to live in retirement. So the problem, though, goal number one, goal number two, go like that for the rest of your life. More money you spend on you, less money for your heirs. And having an heir with a disability or not, psychologically, that's a huge tug of war. I even saw with my own parents, once grandchildren come around, is everybody wants to leave money behind, but I don't want any one of our clients worrying about traveling or going out to eat or doing anything fun for themselves because it's less money for their heirs. So do know there is a better way of doing it, that you can have both. You can have your lifestyle, you can protect your loved one's lifestyle. It's just understanding the unique strategies to do that. So I'm going to go high level on benefits. You could have a whole night on this. There's a very big difference between the two. There are key ages for benefits navigation. I would say the 22nd birthday in the mental health community is the biggest, because if you have a disability that onsets after your 22nd birthday, our loved ones lose the entitlement to collect off the parents' work records. So that's huge, because a lot of these mental illnesses will manifest themselves after that 22nd birthday. So where do they get benefits from at that point? Well, it's maybe supplemental security income if they can qualify as being disabled enough, and off their own Social Security record if they work and have enough quarters. So it's a lot trickier that way if it's a disability after 22. If it's onset earlier, that's why we really need to, from their 18th birthday before their 22nd birthday, have them apply as an adult to see if they are disabled enough to qualify for government benefits. So these are very unique and very specific to your situation, but benefits are not enough to give your loved ones quality of life. SSI is $841 a month. Social Security might be $1,500 a month. They would get Medicaid and Medicare, so their healthcare needs would be taken care of. But rent, food, a lifestyle, Social Security alone is not going to give our loved ones the quality of life that we want. So think of it as a floor, and what we need to do is supplement that floor if we're lucky enough to get one, to pay for what we want to be paid for the rest of our loved one's life. So on the estate planning, we talked about the difference between a trust document and a fund. And I'll skip over that just for the sake of Dave's going to cover it. But here's the financial planning. So this is the stuff that we have a conversation every day, and why this is so different. So tax planning, number one, if most of you live in the state of Pennsylvania, our kids are going to pay taxes on whatever we leave behind to them. We're one of the few states with an inheritance tax. We're a state estate tax with no exemption amount. So our children, $1 that we leave them from everything we have, with the exception of any life insurance. So life insurance isn't counted for Pennsylvania's inheritance tax. Our kids are going to pay a 4.5% inheritance tax, as will our grandchildren. If we leave money to a sibling, it's a 12% inheritance tax in PA. And if anybody else is leaving money behind, it's a 15% inheritance tax from $1 of what we have. So why is that important when you have a loved one with a disability? Well, we're going to be leaving money behind. We almost need to financially take care of them. It's not a, hey, it would be nice to leave money behind for our heirs, but I don't care. I care about myself first if we don't have children with a disability. So you have to understand that. We got to understand that taxes don't just, it's not just our income taxes and reducing our income taxes now that makes sense. It's what about taxation to us in retirement? Brian can nod his head to this. I don't think I've had anybody answer, yeah, I think taxes are going to be lower in retirement when we ask them. Everybody says, yeah, they're probably going to be higher. So in retirement, when we need to spend money, are we exposing ourselves to more taxation? And some of the decisions we're making, is it going to leave a ticking tax time bomb behind to our children? So Social Security. Social Security is one of the biggest misunderstandings of Social Security is it's going to go away. It's not. As long as we have people working, contributing FICA taxes, that's going to be a Social Security benefit for retirees. Will be lower for like our generation. Maybe will we get our full retirement ages pushed back? Probably. May there be new taxes to fix it? More than likely, but it's not going anywhere. So you as a retiree choosing when to start Social Security is huge, especially if you have a child that's considered a disabled adult child that that is entitled to collect off your work record. If they're disabled before 22, they are able to collect 50% of your Social Security benefit when you start your Social Security retirement benefit. 75% when you die. So that's huge. So we don't want to be taking Social Security at 62 and permanently reducing not only our benefit, but our loved ones' benefit. We want to understand how to maximize it. And then investing. Two big things. You have a 22-year-old with special needs, and you're in your 50s or 60s. You should be investing like you're 22. If you need your wealth to last the rest of your loved one's life, that's a much longer time frame than just you and your spouse. So the typical subtract your age from 100, and that's how much you should have in bonds. That goes completely out the window when you have a child with special needs. The kind of accounts you invest in, is it pre-tax, like 401ks, 403bs, thrift savings plans? Is it Roth accounts? Is it taxable investments? Is it life insurance? Is it real estate? Whatever it might be, understanding that you're going to be leaving maybe some of this behind as a way of self-funding the special needs trust, you better understand how those assets are taxed. So the least tax efficient account we'll talk about here in a second, but insurance, term insurance. Well, I buy term insurance for 20 years and my kids will be old enough to take care of them themselves or out of college. I don't need to worry about it anymore. Not when you have a child that might be dependent on you forever. Term insurance can be a great tool as kind of a temporary strategy, and buying term insurance with the right insurance carrier that has products designed to fit unique needs of the special needs community, huge when you're choosing which term carrier to go with. Long-term care planning. Look, I hate to tell you this, we all have a long-term care plan. If we need somebody to take care of us for the rest of our lives, we're either going to pay for it out of our own assets, or an insurance company is going to flip the bill through transfer of risk. But if we're planning on self-funding any kind of legacy with whatever's left behind, well, it could all go to a nursing home. That's not a good plan in terms of building wealth to not protect it off on the backside. So things like life insurance, disability insurance are huge. Something Brian and I don't do, but personal liability, auto, homeowners insurance. very important if you have a loved one with any kind of disability, but mental illness as well. If they're driving a car in your name, if they're living in a house in your name and something happens, they're not going to go after your child's assets. They're going to go after the assets of the person with deeper pockets. So we need to look at that differently. The beneficiary designations. If you do your legal planning, but never work with your attorney and your insurance and financial people and your employer benefits to make sure your beneficiaries are updated, but also updated correctly, it almost defeats the purpose of doing the work with the attorney. You need beneficiaries set up properly. So when it comes to the funding, number one, there's no here's how much you need answer. We have a calculator that's proprietary that I helped create that we use to help get a ballpark number of, hey, what if we died yesterday? How much does my loved one need in their special needs trust to give them the life we want? Well, what if we died in the thick of our retirement? What if we died at mortality? The calculator can get us to that number. Inflation, recent reports, 7.5% on inflation. We also look at how much stuff we spend money on today that wasn't even in existence 20 years ago. I mean, things are going to get more expensive, and I, for one, don't think taxes are going to get any lower. So, so in the funding strategy, you guys all have a different mix of this stuff, and all of it's great. All of it can be there for our retirement. All of it also can be a legacy strategy. So, in Pennsylvania, if you think of it, taxes are like an onion. You keep peeling layers back. State of Pennsylvania, as I mentioned earlier, 4.5% inheritance tax on $1 due in 9 months from every single thing on this, with every single item on this list, with the exception of life insurance. So the home we own, the rental properties we own, the brokerage accounts, the IRAs, jewelry, if they know about it, 4.5% is what our heirs are going to have to pay just to inherit what we leave them. It's not terrible. It's not as bad as the federal estate tax, which is roughly 40%, but we don't have to pay a federal estate tax unless we're married and worth over roughly $24 million. We're single and married over $12 million. So good news or bad news, if you're not worth over those dollar amounts, there's no federal estate tax. But I started in 2005, and the federal estate tax exemption back then, I believe, was $1 million, and spouses couldn't combine their exemptions. So constantly changing tax laws. But the Fed, they count everything. They count life insurance. They count all your investments and property as well. They add all that up, and if collectively it's over the exemption amount, your estate's going to owe roughly 40% in estate taxes on top of inheritance taxes. But that's not where it ends. We have these little things called capital gains taxes. So if you own your home or real estate portfolio or a taxable brokerage account, and that thing, it's appreciated over the past 10 years. If it hasn't appreciated, I don't know what you were doing. It's appreciated. You have all these unrealized gains that maybe you haven't paid taxes. Capital gains are because you haven't realized them. You have a home or real estate portfolio that is appreciated. If we own it when we die and we leave that to our kids, they get what's called a stepped up cost basis, meaning that all that appreciation goes away. They can turn around and sell that security or that property the next day after they inherit it. No 15% capital gains tax. If we transfer an appreciated property, an appreciated security while we're alive, the cost basis transfers with it, meaning that when we die, there's no 4.5% inheritance tax because we gave it away, we gifted it. But now when our kids turn around and go sell that property or sell the securities to live off of and enjoy it, 15% inheritance taxes on what could be decades worth of appreciation. So there is an older school way of, I'm going to put my kid's name on my house or my kid's name on my bank accounts. You don't do that anymore. It's 2022. There's better legal planning strategies to get money and transfer it efficiently. So those type of investments can work really good. I mean, if it's only the 4.5% inheritance tax, that's not terrible. Retirement accounts. Now we get the other layer of the onion, income taxes. Well, our Roth accounts, one of the best type of assets we could leave behind to our heirs, free of income taxes for the rest of not only our lives, but the rest of our kids' lives as well. No income taxes ever paid. just the inheritance tax when we leave it to them. So those are a phenomenal multi-generational wealth vehicle to leave behind. But we are an immediate gratification society. If we don't have to pay taxes today because we don't want to deal with the stress or the pain of it, we'd rather push that pain down the road, even if it's worse 20 years down the road. Well, that could be really bad if taxes go up. So sometimes it makes sense to pay our taxes now, our income taxes, at a known rate. Hopefully that is lower than what it would be in retirement when we need to spend our money and may not have as much income, or when we leave those accounts to our kids. So what I would say is probably the least tax efficient way of leaving wealth behind to anybody, including a special needs trust, are our pre-tax retirement accounts. These accounts that we have been just deferring ordinary income taxes on since we contributed, sometimes contributing under the guise that we're saving taxes. We're really not, we're just deferring them. The IRS gets to participate in our retirement, in the growth of the portfolio with us, because there's a big fat IOU tied to those pre-tax retirement accounts, and what we'll eventually have to owe to the government in income taxes. So they made a big change to how our heirs can inherit pre-tax retirement accounts, and I believe it was 2020 now, due to the Secure Act. So our neurotypical heirs, they have to take out our pre-tax retirement accounts in a 10-year period, pay the income taxes over that 10-year period or within that 10-year period. They used to be able to stretch the income tax liability over their lifetimes. So our kids will have to pay taxes, and possibly at a much higher rate than we would, on pre-tax retirement accounts. Special needs trust doesn't get a pass. Income taxes are still due. One of the exemptions to the Secure Act rule are heirs that have a disability. They're able to still stretch IRA distributions over the rest of their lives. But that money is going to be in a special needs trust. A trust is its own tax-paying entity. So when income is required to come out, if it is taxed at the trust tax rates, a trust hits the highest, I think, 37% income tax bracket after roughly $14,000 of ordinary income. That's not a lot. That means anything above that 14,000 that's required by the government for them to take out as a minimum distribution, the trust is paying 37% in income taxes. That is high. So that's why we try to proactively get ahead of Uncle Sam. Look, it's not the end of the world. If you have couple million dollars in pre-tax retirement accounts on a 401k, a cash balance pension, 403bs, thrift savings plans, it's a good problem to have. We just can't wait till we're 72 when the IRS forces our hands to deal with the embedded income taxes. We want to get ahead of it now. So, but a mix of all this stuff can fund a trust. But if you have other people you want to partake in the wealth that you've created that you're going to leave behind, there are certain assets on here that we try to carve out for the special needs trust and leave other types of assets to our other heirs. And however you decide to equitably leave things behind, and I've learned equal doesn't necessarily mean fair, and fair doesn't mean equal. You want to do it strategically. Talked about the insurance stuff. All right, ABLE accounts. There was a question. I'm trying to tackle the questions you guys had. Hopefully on the special needs trust side of things, we covered enough, and Dave can definitely fill in the gaps there. But ABLE accounts. The question somebody asked, can my loved one that's working put their income into an ABLE account? They sure can, as long as they are considered to have a disability prior to their 26th birthday. Current ABLE Act legislation, I believe, I have to double check this, might have changed this year, but the way it was written, you had to be disabled before you were 26 to even have the ability to contribute to an ABLE account. If you got disabled after that, no ABLE account. But let's just assume that 26 rule still applies. Yeah, we could put income into an ABLE account. We can also, it's 16,000, I gotta fix this, it's 16,000 this year, how much can be contributed to an ABLE account from all sources. Our loved ones can only have one of these if they're eligible to have one. 16 grand's the max. But there's a ton of limitations. An ABLE account isn't a must-have for everybody. It's not a replacement for a special needs trust. It is not a replacement for proper planning. You can't just say, oh, I'll just leave the money to an ABLE account for my loved one. One of the other questions we had is what happens when our loved one dies? What happens to the money in an ABLE account? I don't know. Call the call the Pennsylvania Treasury Department, ask them. I have 50 grand in an ABLE account, my loved one dies. Is there a state recapture? Is there a Medicaid lien on that money? How does the state get recuperated? There's no definitive black and white answer to that. The way the federal law was written is that the states were allowed to reclaim Medicaid payments that were paid from the date the ABLE account was open and funded. No states have actually followed that, but there is no specific thing saying that they can't claw back and get money from an ABLE account. So we don't want to put a lot of money into these things. One of the things we try to educate parents on is, when it comes to funding their loved one. When we ask the parents, if your loved one needed for something now, who pays for it? And usually parents say we do. If you think there's going to be a chance of relying on you even when you're in retirement, who's going to pay for things then? Well, we probably will. Well, you are the living, breathing special needs trust, mom or dad. You don't really need to be putting money away for them in anything, in their trust, in an ABLE account. There's no sense moving money out of your name, out of your own accounts, your dominion and control, into accounts specifically there for your child. There's nothing a special needs trust or an ABLE account can do that you can't do yourself. So when we look at funding an ABLE account, it's got to be strategic. Do we really need a quick fix to retain government benefits? Are we going to be spending the money anyway on disability related expenses so we can get a tax deduction? I just think there's better ways of putting money away through either leverage or investment choices, rather than just jumping into funding a special needs trust, funding an ABLE account when we don't absolutely have to. So an ABLE account has to be a very unique, specific conversation to what makes sense for the big picture. So beginning this planning, I'd say there's two types of people that usually attend our workshops. And the first is what we call a clean slate. No, we haven't done anything. We're just trying to figure out where we begin. We don't have a will. We don't have a trust. We have no estate planning, nothing on the back of a napkin. We have investment stuff, 401ks, cornucopia of accounts out there, but no plan. So where do we begin? You're the easiest. There's nothing that you already paid for that we need to fix. No bad legal planning advice that you got. So, and the good news is you're here and you can do it. And the financial stuff, the financial planning as early as possible, if we can fix some of the common, generic planning decisions people make that aren't really applicable to special needs, like overfunding pre-tax accounts or not buying life insurance with the right carriers, stopping gifting, taking inheritances and gifts from other people and using it more effectively, it just makes it a lot easier in the future. So, we're biased to the answer. I think you should start financially, because like I said, if you died yesterday and you don't have a trust, but you have wealth or life insurance, if you don't have wealth, there's at least enough money there for your child, and we can reactively create a different type of special needs trust with an attorney. So we can still protect benefits and protect them, and there will be money there. If you have a trust, but not enough wealth, your child may not be taken care of. There may not be enough money for him or her. So I think getting your financial ducks in a row, getting organized, where is everything? How is it titled? Who do we want in certain roles as trustees, as guardians, as backups to those? How do we want to equalize our estate between our kids? And what ages do we want to leave money to our neurotypical kids? I don't want any 18-year-old to have a blank checkbook to do whatever the heck they want with money. Do we have a trust for them that protects them from themselves or bad influences till they're more responsible, like 35 or 40? So that's what I think is a lot easier, because then you can sit down with the attorney. You'll have a lot of these answers that they're going to ask you anyway. And then you can get the ball rolling on your legal planning a lot faster. So that brings me to the second type of person that usually comes to this, the person that has stuff. Maybe you have legal planning done. Maybe it's even with one of the really good special needs estate planning attorneys in the area. That's great. But when's the last time you talked to them? I mean, have you reviewed it recently? Has any of your family dynamics changed where you need to change who's going to fulfill certain roles? So I think your attorney should have a relationship with you, should be in touch with you, at least even if it's a postcard or an email once a year saying, hey, we're here. If you need anything, call us. Or, hey, there was a big tax change. We need to have a conversation. Or, hey, your child's turning 18 or 21 or 22 or 26. Let's have a conversation about why that's financially. I mean, most people have investments somewhere, a retirement account, have bought insurance, even if it's just through their employer. That doesn't cut it. That's not financial planning. A portfolio is not a financial plan. A portfolio, stocks, it's a means of accomplishing your goals in your financial plan. So, you really need to work with somebody that understands it holistically, from a fiduciary standpoint too, not somebody that's working in their best interest, not yours. And I can promise you, I've had these conversations enough times over a decade that there's usually one or two things that us as experts having this conversation every day can bring to light, looking at somebody's financial planning decisions they made with somebody that doesn't understand it. And I mean, look, I didn't know what I didn't know 12 years ago when I first transitioned to this. And it was just a smack in the face of, wow, this is very different. There's a lot of mistakes we can make if we don't even know the questions to ask when it comes to special needs planning. So how we work, our meetings, we're doing the Zoom. It's a lot easier to coordinate things now from an efficiency standpoint. Our first meetings are always complimentary. It gives us a chance to get to know each other, see what you're looking for, see if we like each other, number one, to have a second meeting, if we can see ourselves working together. And that's what the point is, to talk, have a conversation, see what you have in place, and then we decide together, does it make sense to go to a second meeting? Maybe you want or need to tackle something else first. Maybe you're really struggling with benefits, or you have a child turning 18 or 22, and you really need to deal with the benefit stuff, and you don't have the bandwidth to deal with everything. That's okay. Happens all the time. Then maybe it's connecting you to somebody else that is that expert in that area, or it's the legal planning, and you get that done, and then you always want the financial pieces to circle back and complement it. So one of the things I wanted to do is surround myself, my team, by experts in the community that don't do what we do, but fill very specific needs for what our families have questions on or need help with on a regular basis. So, but those conversations are really, how do we embark upon a retirement knowing that we might need to support a loved one for the rest of our lives? And how do we build that into our retirement income plan effectively? And how do we fund this trust that we've created with the attorney in the best way, not just a way, but the best way? And, as a certified financial planner, I mean, everything we do is from a fiduciary standpoint, and I don't really understand why there's any other way of doing things in our industry other than a fiduciary bound approach. So very important this day and age. So in summary, you know your loved one better than anybody else. Why give yourselves another job to do, another hat to wear, trying to coordinate all of these other people? Work with a financial planner. And look, if it's us, great. If it's not us, but as long as it's somebody like us, somebody that understands this, that's our job. Our job, believe it or not, it's not to make your investments go up every year. I wish I had a magic wand that could do that. It looks like we did the past 10 years, but that's not the case. It's our job is to be there for you, to help make sure everything is being done cohesively and effectively, so you don't have to coordinate your finances and everything else in life. So really quick, when we do these, it just feels like forever that we did these in person, but we would usually have these evaluation forms. And if you want to email Brian, we can get you this, and that can help in terms of what do we want to talk about? Where are some of the issues that usually start popping in the attendees' brains as we're talking through this? And these are the common concerns. These are the things that I've compiled over a decade plus. I would imagine many of them probably resonate with you, but these are the discussions that we can have in an initial meeting. And additional information. I mean, that's we have a newsletter that goes out monthly that doesn't just talk about financial planning stuff. It's articles about special needs planning, things that are going on, things to be thinking about. We're hosting a Zoom workshop in April where we're going to have one of our strategic partners that does care management come on and just say, look, here's what care management is. Here's why this is so integral as a part of a complement to the legal and financial planning. And where are families currently using care management, while they're alive, or what do they envision when they're gone in terms of, think of it as like concierge services. Who's taking your loved one out to dinner or lunch or breakfast, and how often is somebody checking in on them? So all that responsibility doesn't fall on the neurotypical siblings who may not even be in the area. And most importantly, what does that cost? Because that's really our starting point to figure out how much we need to go into a special needs trust. So in terms of the, going down some of these other questions, the best way to financially prepare. That's an awesome question. Loaded, but awesome question. The best way to financially prepare, I guess, would be to have a meeting with us, or if for whatever reason you don't want to work with us, I can connect you to some other financial planners that do this and that I trust, that know what they're talking about, because your average Edward Jones, Ameriprise, they don't understand it. Vanguard, Fidelity, Schwab definitely do not understand it. And the worst financial advisors that we see are ourselves. Somebody that does it themselves, thinking that managing a portfolio is financial planning. It's not, and trying to navigate 30, 40 years of retirement income through market volatility and tax law changes and the need to continue to support somebody for the rest of their life. I think that's an exercise in futility trying to do it on your own. You need proper advice. Building wealth is not rocket science. Protecting it and spending it as efficiently as you can over the rest of your life and leaving as much of it intact to the next generation, that's a lot more involved. So that I would say is the best way to financially prepare. Don't do it on your own. Don't do it online. Do not follow a talking head online like a Tony Robbins or, God forbid, a Dave Ramsey or Susie Orman. They are your worst enemies when it comes to special needs planning. Trust me, you are probably not the market they're navigating to. They are marketers. They were there to sell DVDs. They still have DVDs. I don't know, but whatever it is these days, DVDs, magazines, and books. That's what they're there to sell, not to do financial planning. Somebody asked about college plans. 529s and covered Ls, they're easy fixes. You can change a beneficiary on that at any time to yourself, to other heirs. You can transfer 529s into an ABLE account if that's what you want to do. Or, you know what? It's another retirement account. You didn't use it for education. That's okay. Now it's another bucket of money in retirement that after 59 and a half, you'll have to pay income taxes on your earnings. That's okay. But you get back what you put in at any time. No taxes, no penalties. So it's easy navigable. So it's just understanding where would a 529 fit in special needs planning. There aren't really, again, tax benefits in the three-person retirement other than try to, as effectively as possible, get money out of pre-tax accounts into Roth, into taxable investments, into life insurance effectively. That would be it. Then I think I covered, Nick, most of the preliminary questions that aren't going to be tackled specifically by David or Brian at the next presentations, but did you guys get any other questions? I guess I could look at the chat. That'd be helpful.
Yes, I had them. I had everybody direct them to me so we didn't clutter the chat and everything. I had Barbara had a few specific questions. So you covered the Medicaid benefits, the assets that are allowed, and what income is allowed. And Barbara just wants to know if any of that changes when her daughter turns 21.
So the big age is 18. That's when our loved ones are eligible for needs-based government benefits off of their income and assets rather than yours. Under the age of 18, they look at the parents' income and assets. So after age 18, to qualify as what's called a DAC, it's called a disabled adult child. That's the Social Security terminology. You have to have a significant physical or cognitive impairment that's expected to last longer than a year. And be deemed unable to engage in what's called substantial gainful activity. It's Social Security's fancy way of saying working and earning roughly $1,300 a month of countable income. If you fit that, you fit the disability criteria, and if you have less than $2,000 in aggregate resources, not counting a properly drafted special needs trust or ABLE account, then you are eligible for needs-based government benefits post age 18, which would be things like supplemental security income, SSI. It's not Social Security. It's administered by Social Security. It sounds like Social Security, but it's not. Just another thing to confuse us. Medicaid, health insurance, huge. If you have a child that had a disability, they probably had Medicaid through the loophole, which they'd be eligible for until 21. But SSI is the gateway to continued Medicaid eligibility post 21. Things like food stamps, Section 8 vouchers are also on there. Waiver services for the disabled adult population. They all have just to keep it simple, $2,000 resource limit to qualify for those. Entitlements are different. Social Security benefits we're entitled to. That's why we're entitled to a disability benefit if we go on disability, if we worked enough, or a retirement benefit at retirement. Our minor children are entitled to one if we die or become disabled or retire. But if our children are disabled before they're 22, after age 18, they're entitled to collect off our Social Security record. Probably going to be much higher than theirs. With that, collecting Social Security, they become entitled to Medicare. And those are not financially tested. So I think the uniqueness of benefits navigation really is based on your situation, Barbara. All good questions. And if they are confusing you or frustrating you, Brian or I can get you connected to somebody that really understands how to navigate that.
And Barbara has lots of comments in here. I understood an able account to be a means for my 18-year-old to put to work earnings so that she wouldn't risk the loss of her Medicaid benefits. I think you talked about that.
Well, actually, that's a good one, because on the surface, sure, they make income. You get it out of their name so it doesn't accumulate in their checking account and get dangerously close to the $2,000 resource limit. Sure, we can fund an able account. However, if they're on SSI, we're already charging them room and board, hopefully in the $500 to $600 a month range. But let's assume she's not on SSI. You can, I mean, if she has a cell phone, if you drive her to and from, or if she drives herself or has car insurance, car payments, her share of the other household expenses, I think there's other creative ways to charge her for her expenses, which means you're collecting more of her. She pays you for the things you're paying for. You're getting it out of her name, which is the whole purpose to begin with. Now it's in your name. Now you can do whatever you want with it. You can fund your Roth IRA, you can pay down debts, you can fund the life insurance or long-term care premiums with it. I think that is better to navigate those options rather than just taking the easiest way of, well, we'll just put it into the able account so it doesn't start accumulating against her. I think that should be your last resort if you don't have any other options to fund that able account. Because look, she pays you, and I say that lightly, pays you, really, she's not really paying you, just moving money out of her name. She pays you, it's in your checking account, you can spend it on whatever you want for. You put it in the able account, it's significantly restrictive on what you can use it for. There's nothing fun an able account can be used for. It's disability related expenses only. Why would you put money into an account with, number one, spending restrictions, but also investment restrictions? There's a handful of mutual funds you can pick from. I'm an investment guy. I don't want a couple of mutual funds. I don't equity-based mutual funds to begin with. I mean, you could fund your own name and fund your Roth IRA, invest in what you want to, and most importantly, spend it on whatever you want to. No restrictions. So hopefully that makes sense.
Awesome. I think one of the first questions that came in the chat too, which is important to address, what's the definition of disabled when it comes to everything we're talking about?
A quick Google on definition of disability for Social Security would give you the answer, but it's a significant physical or cognitive impairment that's expected to last longer than 12 months or result in death, and an individual can't engage in substantial gainful activity. SGA, it's called.
Okay.
And that, for any of you that had the pleasure of navigating an SSI application, is determined by the Social Security agent that is talking to your loved one to determine if they are disabled enough to qualify for these benefits. The bane of the existence of any parent with a child with a disability is navigating this with Social Security. It takes forever. It's not an automatic turnaround. You could get denied. You could be denied for the full amount. You could have a Social Security agent that thinks that you're taking money out of their own checking account when it comes to giving your child an SSI benefit. But that's why I encourage the use of experts in navigating an SSI application or a Social Security disability application, because you want to try to do it the right way the first go around, rather than getting denied and having to appeal it. Use somebody that's done it 100 times, hundreds of times. Mm-hmm. So, but that's the definition of disability for Social Security.
And the definition of disability worked against me when I was applying for disability a long time ago too. So I had to get an attorney for that.
Yeah, I mean, even autism, you're not disabled. It's like being caught committing a crime in our country. You're innocent until proven guilty. Well, you're competent until proven otherwise. You're not disabled until proven otherwise. By a diagnosis alone, it doesn't mean that you're disabled. You still have to be deemed essentially unable to work that much. And I tell all of our parents that are getting ready for these SSI applications is you really want to bring your kid on their worst day. I mean, what if that was every day? Would they be able to hold down a job? Would they get up and go to work every day? Would they make more than $1,300 a month if this situation stayed the same? And that's the truth of the matter, because we don't want to. None of this planning is to stop or restrict our loved ones from being as contributing members of society as possible. A lot of it's like a backup plan. It's like a plan B. If going to college, graduating, living independently, being gainfully employed, getting married, having kids, if all that doesn't happen, what is our backup plan? Where our backup plan is trying to have our loved ones eligible for these benefits that can provide a floor of supports for them. Now, we can't do it if some sort of mental health condition comes at 26 or 30 years old. It's all right. Did they work enough while they were working to get enough off Social Security disability? Can they qualify? It's sad to say, like, how bad is it? Does the Social Security agents think it's bad enough where this individual is disabled? It's very hard. And that's why it's frustrating. That's why it's helpful to leverage an expert in navigating those appeals, like you did, an attorney. And frankly, no attorney's going to take a Social Security appeal case unless they think they're going to win, because it's contingency based anyway. But there's people that can help you in the beginning when you're first applying.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just to touch on that, Pat and Nick, we actually have a friend of ours on, I'm not sure if he still is, his name's Don Atkinson. He's a government benefits specialist, and I just spoke with him last week, and it was very informative on mental health conditions and government benefits. So shout out to you, Don. but he's on here, and again, it's definitely a space that there needs some TLC.
Yeah, and the other thing too, it's, I mean, applying for SSI, applying for Social Security, the individual has to be willing to go and sit down and say, I'm disabled. That's hard. That's a lot of the struggles are, my kid's not going to do that. They're not going to, they don't want to admit they have anything wrong. They don't want to admit they're disabled. And that's what makes those applications that much harder, when you have somebody that is reluctant to,
or they're not
go on
aware of
government
it,
benefits.
or they're
Yeah.
not personally aware of it. Right.
Exactly. So as I said, mental health is I think the hardest. You characterize it as special needs planning. It's the hardest circumstance to try to navigate, because it's not like you've had a ability to plan for this for 18 years or 25 years.
Right. Related question from Debbie: what is a disability related expense?
The easiest answer to that is you go to paable.gov. You look at the FAQs, and it'll give you a list of the disability related expenses. Education, I can pay for rent, assistive technology, therapeutic, doctors, the therapist, psychiatrist, medical expenses. You can justify dietary stuff, supplements in there, anything that you would consider a disability related expense. Mm-hmm. And frankly, and you can call the Treasury if you want to. I mean, they don't have the manpower to audit ABLE account beneficiaries. So a lot of it, and I've had talking to them myself and attending presentations early on when they came out, it's kind of on like a trust factor that you're using the money on what it's supposed to be used for. So sometimes though, just like misappropriating funds from SSI or using special needs trust dollars for what they're not intended to be. It's not if they're gonna find out about it. It's more of a when, and you don't want to get a letter 10 years down the road saying, hey, you misspent $5,000 a year for the past 10 years. You owe us 50 grand. I've seen it happen with social an SSI benefit, not with ABLE accounts, but I would go to the website and that'll tell you what disability related expense is. It isn't video games, going on a vacation, or going shopping at the mall. I can tell you that much.
All right. A few people initially asked, how do you set up an ABLE account? Like what do you do? What is the first thing you need to do?
So I'll give you the easy answer, but I would say first, you need to talk to your financial planner. You need to talk to a financial planner that is versed in special needs planning to see if it makes sense and to what extent. After that, you go to paable.gov and you open the account. It's very easy. It's all done online. But it's your child's money. It's theirs. Unless you did a guardianship over them, it's their money in an ABLE account. They can do whatever they want with it once it's in there, if they know about it, of course.
And one person asked, can you set up an ABLE account for yourself?
Yeah.
Okay.
As long as there hasn't been a guardianship proceeding, as long as you are considered disabled, which again, read the Treasury's website. There's a lot of interpretation as who's disabled, right? Mm-hmm. Do you have to be on Social Security? Do you have to be on SSI? Like what's the criteria there? And oh, go ahead, sorry.
No, that's all right. The rest of that question for that individual was, is that the best way to put money aside for yourself if it's your own?
Oh, if it's your own money?
Mm-hmm.
I'd ask you this. Do you want to put money into an account which you can't take out to go and do something fun with?
Okay. And then what do you think would be the best way to put money aside for yourself if you're the one with the disability?
I mean, it depends, Nick. If you're on benefits,
Mhm.
you can't save in your name. I mean, look, if you have a family member that you trust and you're paying them expenses to get money out of their name, and then it's in their names where they can spend it on you, great. But
Mhm.
depending on how much, I mean, we now can set up first party special needs trust for ourselves. So if there's a good chunk of change there, we can fund a first party special needs trust, also known as a self-funded special needs trust, where there's none of those restrictions like an ABLE account. There's a legal cost. It's going to cost you a couple $1,000s to create one with an attorney. There's going to have to be somebody overseeing it as a trustee, but it's up to that trustee's discretion on what is an allowable distribution from the first party trust. Whereas an ABLE account, it's disability related expenses only.
Mhm.
So I would say consult with an attorney there, navigate
Mhm.
if you're on government benefits, which ones, and cash and gift cards, I don't think count, but I'm not telling you to do that.
And Brian, is that something that we might be able to get into a bit more in your forum?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great idea.
Okay, awesome. So Brian's forum is coming up in April, and that is called The Basics of Personal Finance, What Everyone Needs to Know. And that, when we talked about planning this event series, was for someone like me who has no idea. I've been, I live with a mental illness. I'm doing well now, but there's been a long time that I didn't know how to plan for myself or really take care of myself, and I'm figuring it out now. So that's for all of us. And that forum will be on Thursday, April 21st at 6:30. So for anyone who is interested, and if you're here and you ask those questions, we'll get into that more with Brian. All right, let me pull up the rest.
Yeah, and Nick, I'm going to show. For getting in touch with Brian and I know Brian put his email in there. Please reach out to us. We have a couple pieces we can send you as a follow-up to tonight, our team brochure, things of that nature. But if one of the things, if I can get my technology to work here, we just got a QR code. We have a Facebook page. So the Facebook page, helpful articles we post on there. Anywhere else we'll be presenting. We do these usually once a week during this time of year up until Memorial Day, but let me show this really quickly in our team brochure and we can get this out to you. But hopefully this will work if you scan it from your phone. But I go ahead with your questions too, Nick, and I'll bring this up.
Okay. And you'll probably be at our walk again this year too, I'm sure.
Yeah. So here's the QR code.
Awesome.
If you scan that, that'll take you right to our special needs planning Facebook page. Getting in touch with us, contact information's on there. But from this meeting, this is information. We hit you with a lot. It's really taking the next steps and putting it into action. We're always available as a resource to start that conversation and make sure not only do you have things done, but have them done right.
Okay. All right. Let me go through. I'm gonna skip the questions that are mainly aimed at our next forum, which is maximizing the effectiveness of special needs legal planning with David Siegel. So that is on March 24th at 6:30. So I know
if
a lot.
You have any, I could touch on them as much as I can, Nick, or
Okay.
if they're really unique legal questions. Then.
Diagnosis of a mental health condition, son. Well, my mother's set up a special needs trust, but not power of attorney in her will. How do I prevent my disabled brother from continually suing the trust to gain control? Is that, would we want to ask that of David, or?
That is a Dave. Save that one for Dave. Why don't you just tee him up with that one?
Okay.
A great one to start with.
Start the webinar with it.
Okay. Let me see. How will a college savings plan affect teenagers' ability to receive disability and Medicaid benefits? Then there's the rest of the question. Why do psychologists get to charge $300 per hour? I don't know if you can answer that. And not
that I don't know. The college savings plan question is an easy fix though to get that, so it doesn't count against somebody.
Okay. All right. Let me go through. With an ABLE account, if the owner or the client passes away, does the money go to the state or can the owner name a beneficiary?
You can name a beneficiary, but again, it's still up to the states. Do they come back and ask for any kind of Medicaid repayment or estate recovery, that sort of thing?
Okay. All right, I think that covers those. Let me go through the chat again. Thank you for answering all this, by the way.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. After I retire and my son will be eligible for 50% of my Social Security, is there still a $2,000 limit on assets?
Not for Social Security, but yes, for Medicaid, which when you have somebody on Social Security that then becomes entitled to Medicare, they still would be duly eligible for Medicare and Medicaid. So there would be that $2,000 resource limit.
Okay. Which expert do we talk to regarding obtaining government benefits for a child with a disability before the age of 22? And then they said SSI. I thought they can't collect on SSDI unless we are disabled or retired. That's from Christina. So
say that one again. I missed the first part of it.
the first part of the question was, which expert do we talk to regarding obtaining government benefits for a child with a disability before age 22?
That would be the Don Atkinsons of the world. And Brian or I can get you connected to those people.
Okay. And then we have a poll that Debbie is going to put up at the end. And if you'd like 1847 Pat or Brian to reach out to you, I just wanted to get your permission for them to reach out, and then I'll use the email address that you registered with if that is something that you'd like. And
Nick,
yep.
So Nick, I'm showing my screen. This is right off the PA-ABLE website. So when the beneficiary dies, you see that's open to a ton of interpretation, which is why I suggest not putting a substantial amount into these ABLE accounts, because there's really no clarity on what happens when your loved one dies.
Okay. And the second part of Christina's question was, I thought they can't collect on our SSDI unless we are disabled or retired.
That is correct. So you have to start your Social Security benefit for your loved one to start it, which usually 60. Yeah, again, looking at where spouses are at 62 with earning records, most of the time it makes sense for at least the higher wage earner to wait until full retirement age, which 66 in a couple months or 67, depending on how old you are, before you start that benefit. Your child doesn't benefit from you waiting past full retirement age. But again, that's not a hard and fast answer. It depends on if your spouse going to be also collecting off your benefit and how much investment you have. But ideally, we wait until full retirement age, because Social Security increases by 6% guaranteed, plus cost of living adjustments from 62 to full retirement age. You can't guarantee your investments are going to do that.
Okay. All right. And to clarify something for Barbara, she thought 529 plans, if never used for education or training, had large tax consequences for the funder.
No, you pay ordinary income taxes on the earnings. So okay. Contributions, you get tax free because you already put that money in, or already paid ordinary income taxes on it. So,
okay.
But if you fund an ABLE account with a 529, they're both under the Internal Revenue Code section 529. You can then take the money out of the ABLE account tax free. Okay. So that's like one of the where an ABLE account would make sense. Oh, I've got 100 grand in a 529. Well, I've got 25 grand of disability related expenses. All right, well, let's move that from the 529 into the ABLE as much as we can per calendar year, take it out tax free to pay for that disability related expense.
This kind of makes me glad that I don't have kids. I mean, I don't know how you retain all of this information.
Well, that's why we always jokingly say, how is anybody their own financial planner? It's impossible to do that when you have a full-time job in life.
Wow. Not to be weird or anything, but this is a lot of information. Another question, and thank you again for answering these. Do food stamps affect the amount that you get from SSD? Would they deduct the food stamp amount from your SSD amount?
I am 99% sure they do not.
They do not. Okay. Experts at navigating the SSI process. We already addressed that, right?
We know enough to be dangerous, but we're not benefits experts, nor do I want to be the one helping somebody navigate an application or an appeal. That's why they have those experts.
Okay. From Kim, my son received a large payout from Social Security when he was financially approved for SSDI. In order to continue receiving help, he needs to get rid of that money. Any suggestions?
Yeah, I believe it's 9 months that you have to spend a back payment from Social Security before it's a countable resource. Thought it was going to give me a direct answer, but I think it's a 9-month period where that's not an asset. So the back payment, you have time to spend that, pay yourself back for expenses that you incurred on behalf of your son before you need to rush to fund an ABLE account or anything like that.
And do you have any recommendations on what to do with the money before?
Plenty of recommendations, but I think the biggest thing is you need to have like an accounting of what did I spend on my kid? And then you could say, well, this is just him paying me back for what I spent. You know, they need a new bed set, clothing. We went on vacation. Here's his share of the shore house or his share of the hotel and the airfare. I mean, there's nothing that says you can't have your child pay you back for things you spent money on.
Mm-hmm.
And you're just moving money from an account that's bad for them, countable against them for government benefits, into an account in your name, which is not bad for them when it comes to government benefits. And then you can use that money in more effective ways for them.
Okay.
Yeah, Pat, do you mind actually just touching on that? What we see a lot of times is, really good intentions, if it's grandparents, aunts, or uncles, leaving money behind for a loved one and how that might complicate things.
Yeah, good question. So, good point, rather. So I think special needs planning is like the most multi-generational planning that can exist out there. Really some phenomenal ways grandparents can get involved, aunts and uncles can get involved that can directly either benefit the individual with a disability or benefit the care providers to take some of the financial worries and burden off of them. So not that they're necessarily mistakes. Look, if somebody's willing to give you money or give your kid money, you're not going to, look a gift horse in the mouth and screw that up. But there's some better ways that those individuals can do their gifting or their planning. So number one, if you've got grandparents that are never going to spend all their money and they're just keeping it in their names till they die, well, we just talked about the state of Pennsylvania and inheritance taxes. Why do all of this to leave a tax burden to the kids when we could be looking at strategically gifting? Let's say the grandparents are financially independent. They can give you got a husband and a wife or partners, they can give $32,000 a year to as many people as they want without doing a lick of anything. No paperwork, no gift tax returns, absolutely nothing. So if they wanted to give you, the parent, so the grandparents give the gift to the children, $32,000 a year, I think that's going to help with therapeutic expenses, residential treatment program expenses, you name it. I mean, that's them allowing their family to benefit from the wealth they accumulated while they're here. So that's phenomenal. That's better than them just leaving it to the state of Pennsylvania to tax you at 4.5% when you die. The other thing is, I mentioned earlier, your child that has special needs does not need anything set aside for them while you, the primary caregiver, are alive. So if grandparents can use that gift more efficiently, maybe they're healthy enough, they're never going to spend their money, and that $32,000, instead of putting $32,000 into their grandchild's special needs trust, that's great, but it's 32 grand. So if the grandparents died the next day, there's $32,000. How many years would grandparents have to live and gift $32,000 where it would make an actually impactful difference in their grandchild's life? A long time, right? With a cooperative stock market. Well, what if the grandparents said, this money can be used we're going to leverage it. We're going to take $32,000 instead of gift it. We're going to take the $32,000. We're going to buy as much life insurance on ourselves that we can possibly get that's going to leave a tax-free and guaranteed legacy to our grandchild, to their special needs trust, or to our children. We don't need the money anyway. We want to leave as much money behind as we possibly can, and we don't want the government to get it. It's a great strategy. Or the grandparents can say, if they're older or unhealthy, my kid or kids are healthy. Why don't I use this 32,000 to pay for the life insurance on mom and dad of the child with a disability, so they have the money there when it's needed when they die to fund the special needs trust for their child, and they don't have to worry about coming up with an extra 32,000 or $10,000 every year to fund this life insurance policy, which they know they need. They need a funding strategy for their child eventually. We can do it for them and leverage our gifts more effectively than giving $15,000 or $32,000 to a special needs trust, putting it in the stock market and hoping the best. I mean, there's good ways to do it, but there are better ways to do it. It's just understanding that with Zoom, the world's a lot flatter. We can get everybody in the same virtual room to talk about these things. People that are willing and wanting to gift, to really have an impact, make an impactful difference for for their loved ones. So that's what I find really cool when you got family working at all different generational levels to say, hey, what's the best way we can do this? So hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, it's still a ton of information, so it's a lot floating around. And I think the only question that I didn't get to is all of this that we talked about in terms of SSI and securing someone's future. Does this change a lot if you're the primary caregiver but not a legal guardian of someone? Like, what kind of advice would you give someone who's?
I guess I mean, anybody can plan. I mean, a sibling can plan for the financial future of their sibling by leaving them money or planning to leave them money. I don't think you have to be the legal guardian, and it's hard to get guardianship, full permanent guardianship in the mental health community. They do have some limited guardianship, temporary guardianship options, but full guardianship where you're going to court and a judge is declaring somebody mentally incompetent with a legal guardian appointed for the rest of their life. Most judges nowadays are not doing that. So I don't know if that answered the question, but that's that's something Dave will tackle, powers of attorney versus guardianship versus mental health. I think it's mental health powers of attorney. There's a lot of evolving things in the world that allow others to be involved in the medical decisions or for somebody else. So,
gotcha. Okay, I am pretty sure that's everything that was submitted, and I'm going to give you the opportunity to unmute and raise your hand and talk to us and ask a question. If you didn't get to ask it in the chat, I'm going to turn the chat on for everyone so that you can just post a question, or you can raise your hand to come on and ask a question. And just let me know, WL. All right. Yes, you did already ask a question, and we got to that one, WL. About the food stamps. Yes, we did. All right. Anybody else have any questions for Pat or Brian?
Usually be the part of an in-person workshop where we would just start picking on people that volunteer their questions. So Don Atkinson. Yes, it's Don Atkinson. New Beacon Planning is the name of his organization. If you want, we can get you that information.
Yeah. All right, Christina. And Debbie, if you could put up the poll just to get everybody's, if you would like more information and you would like Pat or Brian or Don to reach out to you, just let me know in this poll that Debbie's going to put up if it's okay to reach out to you, and if it's okay to reach out with the email that you registered with, or if you'd like it by phone.
Yeah, and let you know too what that would look like. It would be to have a conversation to talk about what that initial meeting would look like and the topics and whatnot that we would cover. Our initial meetings are your agendas anyway, what you want to tackle. But going into it, please know we're not there just coming in expecting you right off the bat to say, all right, anybody you've been working with financially, insurance-wise, you got to stop working with them and work with us. No, it's to have a conversation and see if there's anything we can do to complement. And I think the worst thing that would come out of an investment of an hour's time talking about the financial planning decisions you made is the peace of mind that you did everything right. And if there's nothing we can do to bring value to what you've already done and everything's the way you would have normally do it in a special needs planning situation, we'll tell you that. But if there's things that we feel could be done better, ways we specifically might be able to help, and you want our help most importantly, then that's what we would talk about and what a second meeting would consist of showing you, here's some of the things that you can be doing a little bit better than what you've already done.
Awesome. Awesome.
I hope you can tell from here we don't bite. These conversations are not easy, they're emotional. So know that going into it, it's, we're here to move at your pace as well.
Very good. All right. So just as a reminder for everyone, we have 2 more sessions in this series coming up. The next one is with Dave Siegel, maximizing the effectiveness of special needs legal planning for your disabled loved one. That's Thursday, March 24th at 6:30, exactly a month from now. The following month is the basics of personal finance, what everyone needs to know, with this guy that you see on the screen, Brian. And he's going to talk about what it's like and what we need to know as, even family members, peers, anybody, the basis of a stable financial plan. So I'm looking forward to that for myself.
It'll be fun. It'll be fun.
And it looks like Barbara would like to be contacted. So I'll let you know, Brian and Pat, right after this. And then how soon can Barbara expect some outreach from you?
I'm sure, Brian, if it's not tomorrow, next week, whatever works for you,
if it's not tomorrow, it'll be Monday. We definitely we're excited to be here, and we definitely want to give you guys the TLC that you deserve. So
very good. And if you need anything, I can be the bridge between all the things. So I'm the person that sent you out the confirmation emails and everything. If I missed a question, you can yell at me. You can just email me back and yell at me and say, Nick, just put me in touch with these guys, please, so that I can get everything together. So if you want to talk to Don, Pat, or Brian, I'll let them know when you answered the poll. They'll reach out to you. And if you need anything else, just email back. And hopefully we'll see you at the next sessions as well, because you registered for, most of you registered for all 3 of them. So I'll see you.
Thank you everybody too for listening to us for an hour tonight. I hope you found at least one new thing of value that can help in what you're doing. And please let other people know, look, the resources, we're out there. They can tap into us. They send them to the Facebook page if they want to attend another presentation. Mm-hmm. So thank you guys again. And Debbie, Nick, thank you guys for having us out. Really appreciate the opportunity to present. Absolutely. Thank you for doing it. That was impressive. All right. Well, everyone have a great evening, and you're welcome, Wendy. Thank you, Martha. And thanks everybody for joining us. Have a great night. Thanks, guys. Have a good night.